My business is Highland Colours, and today I'm going to do a review of this Ashford E-spinner. It's a new piece of equipment for myself. Ashford have made these for some years, but it took me a little while to get around to buying one, mainly because I was very happy with foot-powered spinning wheels. I've had a number of Ashford wheels over the years. I started spinning 42 years ago with an Ashford Traveller, which is a lovely little wheel and fits into a small cupboard. It has a lazy Kate that's attached to the wheel, as everybody will know who spins, and the bobbins go onto the wheel for storage. And so it's a great little wheel, and I started spinning on that, and then I moved on to an Ashford Elizabeth with the double drive band, and that was good. And then eventually I went on to a Kromsky Symphony. The Kromsky Symphony was a wheel I wanted because I wanted to spin faster. I was starting to spin for money and to sell, and I decided to try and up my game a bit in terms of how much wool I could produce, and also using it for much finer yarns. I bought the jumbo bobbin for it and spun jumbo lock yarns on it too. I did have an issue with the pedals, the treadling on it at one point, but we made a modification to those, and it was really the backbone of my business for 10 years. More recently, I felt that it would be helpful for me to have an electric wheel. I've resisted them, but the reason I have decided to go for one is because I do a lot of production spinning where I'm sitting at the wheel for 3 hours at a time. And to keep up a very fast pace with the flyer for a finer yarn for that amount of time, it creates a lot of fatigue in your body. So with posture, having to sit at a wheel and treadle and pull out, and to sit in that spot for that amount of time doing that is quite fatiguing. So I had heard online, I'd seen reviews of these, and the claim was that you could produce a lot more yarn. And I thought, well, I'm a bit skeptical about that, because it doesn't really matter what's turning this flyer. My hands can only work at the speed they can work. So I wasn't sure if it was really going to mean I could produce more yarn in the same amount of time. But having bought this and trialed it now for a little while, I do believe it has enabled me to spin more yarn in the same amount of time, because of what I've just said about your posture and being able to sit there and do it for longer. So I think it's a great tool. It doesn't mean I'm getting rid of my foot-powered looms, because foot-powered wheels, because I do still use those for other things. This is the smaller of the e-spinners. I didn't go for the jumbo size because I have a jumbo wheel, the Ashford Country Spinner, and you'll see that in another video. The bobbins are huge and they take 1 kilo of yarn, and the foot pedaling on those big wheels is quite slow for what I'm doing. Like the chunkier yarns don't need so much twist as, like, for instance, a lace weight yarn might need. So it's not quite so fatiguing as spinning a finer yarn. So I didn't go for a jumbo e-spinner. You could, and that's fine. It's just I already had the other one, so I didn't. So I want to just talk about this. These bobbins are holding about 220 to 30 grams of yarn, so that's quite a good big bobbin. It comes with a Lazy Kate, which, let's just come out of there, but that's a useful tool to have. That comes with it. And this is the tension knob here with a little spring on it. So, and also it comes in a bag that is padded with a zipper and handle, and the whole thing weighs, I think they say it's 2.5 kilos or something. It's not a lot, so it's easy to put it in a bag and take it somewhere. It also would be very useful in a camper van or in a car, or you could use it out in a workshop or anywhere. I think there are a couple of reasons why I think that this is a very good buy for some people. If you have a small child at home, a toddler, a baby that wants to get their fingers into that wheel as you're treadling, as they do, you could get around that with this, because it can sit here on the table, or you could put it on a breakfast bar. So you could get up higher with it. So that's one good thing. The other thing is, anyone who's handicapped and cannot pedal as well as use their hands for the spinning, this is the answer. And you could really do some really nice work on this if you are handicapped. It can sit at any height that you want. A lot of people put them on the little IKEA trolleys and wheel them around and keep all their wool and everything in the different levels of the trolley, and that's a nice idea too. So just to go over it, we've got here the flyer. You can see these are spring clips here that have the little holes that the thread goes through, so you pinch those and pull them along. And then anyone who's spun art yarns or lock yarns will know that this is great to have this rather than a hook, because the locks don't get stuck on this, so that's good. We have an Irish tension here over the wheel, and there's a spring there, and that is tightened here. You alter the tension there. So there's 3 oil points, 1, 2, 3, and this will go Z twist, S twist, speed, and then on off is here. So I'll just plug it in now and give a bit of a demonstration with it. I've just moved the camera around so that you can perhaps get a better view of it from this side. This is supplied with a foot pedal and obviously the cord which gives it the electricity, so that's plugged in there, and this one is plugged in here. Now this is quite important. I find this is really, really useful because when I'm spinning, I have both hands that I'm using perhaps, and I don't want to have to take my hand off the yarn to hit the off button. Now you could, but it's not convenient, so it's much quicker and easier to be able to stop-start this with your foot. I've put this up here on the table. Normally it would sit on the floor, but just so that you can see how it works. So I'm going to tilt the camera down slightly towards this, so you'll probably lose part of my head in the camera here so that you can see this being. So I've just turned it round again because I realized that I pull to the left with spinning, so I had to do that. So this is all plugged in now, and I'm going to turn it on using the foot pedal. First of all, here is the little hook that they give you, which fits in this side, and we hook it through these yarn guides, and then through here. Tension is adjusted with a little knob on the side, so I'm going to have only just a little bit of tension on there, And Ashford sends you this small package of presumably merino yarn, oh sorry, fibre, which I'm going to use as a demonstration. So I'll just make a very quick row lag out of it. Just for the purpose of demonstrating. So I have this already turned on. I have my speed set at where I like it to be. And as you saw, that started quite slowly, that flyer. And that is because we don't want the yarn to be jerked quickly out of our hands. So that's a feature that Ashford have put in there, which is nice. So now just to give you an idea, if you were a beginner, complete beginner, you could turn this right down to there and just work very slowly at getting your yarn right. So that's really a helpful thing. Top marks to Ashford for this, because sometimes when we're beginning to spin, it can be difficult to maneuver with your hands and remember to treadle at the right pace with your feet. So that's taken all of the worry out of that. But I do think it's a good idea to learn how to do it the traditional way as well. So if I want to go up to a much, if I wanted to spin this in a very, very fine thread all of a sudden here, you see the twist that's giving me on there, and that's allowing me to work quite quickly. I can go faster, but I don't think well, maybe I could spin that fast, I don't know. So I can, but that's quite fatiguing to go that fast. The fast spinning is good for plying, obviously, which is quite a tiresome job. So I'm going to come back down to earth here, and if I want it to go in quicker, which I kind of do, I need to turn the knob, get the tension a little bit more on there. So instead of taking my hands off of this now to turn it off, I can put my foot on the pedal. So that's good. Yeah, I like it. I've shown you all the things I like about this wheel. I haven't said anything negative about it, and the reason for that is because I haven't actually found any reason why I would say anything negative yet. I don't think there is anything wrong with it. It's a good piece of kit and I would recommend it. So, okay, I've brought the camera in still further so that we can see this being drafted out. Hopefully you can see that against my dark background of my apron. Oop, got a bit on my shirt there. I like to spin using the long draw method, but with this it's a little bit tricky because when I hit the sari silk in the wool, it is a shorter fibre than the wool itself, and so if I'm just pulling out quite quickly as a long draw, then sometimes it would break. So you can see I'm regulating the uptake of the twist with my right hand. The nice thing about the E-spinner is that it just keeps a very, very even twist. It's a common problem when new spinners begin that they want to really grab this yarn and hold on, this wool, and really hold on to it. And that's perhaps the worst thing you can do when you're spinning. You just want to hold it very lightly and just let it feed through. And the right hand is doing all the work about, you know, making the twist travel up. It's just stopping the twist from going when you don't want it to go. There's a big lump of green there. This yarn looks really, really good when it's woven because of all the different flecks of colour in it. It's also quite soft. I've just made a scarf out of this. And there we are. So that's the end of that piece there, and I'm going to hit the pedal and it stops. So hope that helps to demonstrate the wheel. I want to talk about a project that I'm doing at the moment, and it isn't a hand-spun project. I normally would always spin the yarn that I want for any project that I do, but I had to admit defeat on this one. The reason for that is because it's a Gansey, and anyone who knows anything about Gansey knitting will probably understand immediately why I didn't try to hand spin the yarn. I bought this yarn from Frangipani. I bought it from Helston in Cornwall. Yes, Frangipani, and it's 5-ply Guernsey wool. And Guernsey wool is just in between 4-ply, sort of Shetland 4-ply weight and a double knitting. It's right in the middle. The Americans would call it more of a sport weight. The difference with this yarn is that it is 5 plies, as I've just said, and that means that if you're going to get 5 strands of hand spun, I'm just trying to pull this apart here so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. If you get 5 strands of hand spun and you ply them together, that means each one has to be really, really fine, and it's so time consuming. And I just thought life wasn't long enough to do this. I don't know if you can see that little thin piece there. So there's 5 plies there. The reason for that is because it makes an incredibly round yarn. We don't want a yarn that goes flat in knitting with a Gansey. Ganseys were sometimes called Guernseys. They are very tightly knit sweaters, jumpers, whichever country you're in, that they started to be knitted. Well, I suppose actually the history goes a long way back, but I'm trying to find a picture here of a traditional sort of, well, I'll show you the back page here. They started to be knitted for fishermen before the days of PVC or plastic, and they were knitted very, very tightly so that the wind didn't penetrate through, and also there was a certain amount of repelling the water with them, because the oils were often left in the wool just for that purpose, so that it was slightly waterproof. They were knitted very tight to the skin. If you go into a shop now and you try on a machine-made Gansey, because you very rarely come across hand-knitted Ganseys for sale because there's so much work in them. But if you go into a shop and you try one on, the size that you ask for, which is normally what you would wear, will probably not be loose enough by our modern standards. We just kind of think with, you know, garments being slightly looser than what they were knitted at. So I'm knitting a large man's size, and I'm going up a size just to give that give in it. I'll be talking more about this project as I do it, but I just want to recommend to start with this wonderful book by Beth Brown, I think Reinsel. I hope I pronounced that right. And it really, if you want to knit a Gansey, this is the book to get. There are other books on the market that have lots of very interesting information, but this one I found is for knitting the traditional Gansey, and you'll have everything here from casting on, how you do the splits at the side, and just there's various patterns. We've got a whole bank of pattern charts that show all the different designs. Now, the designs were for the area that they were knit in. So there'll be a Gansey that was knitted for one part of the north coast of England, or one design that was knitted for herring fishermen that were coming out of Yarmouth, or wherever they lived, they had their pattern. And also the initials of the fisherman were knitted into the side at the bottom, so that if he was washed overboard, we could tell where he came from and what his initials were. And his jumper very often would be used for his identification if he was no longer able to be identified. A bit grisly, but that was a practical reason for the designs. So the designs are wonderful, and there's a whole lot of information in Ruth's book about them all and what they were called. And I'm going to be knitting this Eriskay one, and I'm going to be doing it in Helston blue. It is a sort of medium blue. Now, Jan from guernseywool.co.uk will send you this wonderful colour card, and I thought I knew which blue I wanted when I looked on the website, but actually I didn't know. So it's worth getting this, because having the colour in front of you and being able to really look at it is much better than seeing it on a computer screen. When you consider the amount of work that's going to go into knitting one of these, it's worth getting it right. The other thing I would recommend is that a tension swatch be knitted, maybe more than one, because you really do want to get this right. Once you've cast on, there's no increasing at the sides, they're straight up. So you do need to get it right at the beginning, because it's very unforgiving if you don't. There are a few other things that I think are very foundational to knitting one of these. Now, I've got a bit of knitting on here, but ignore that. This is an Addy needle. I bought these from a supplier online called The Laughing Hen, and I like these needles, the Addy needles. You need the longer 40cm double pointed needle for a Gansey, because they are, well, you need the length because of the amount of knitting you're going to have on it. You can knit this with a double pointed circular needle, but I don't like to work for a long time with one of those needles. Some people get on with them fine, so that's fine, whatever you like. But I like this, and I like to use it with a knitting belt, so that takes a lot of the fatigue out of a small fine knitting for me. Now, the Addy needles are nice. They've got the number of the needle, the 3mm, 2mm. It's printed on here, which is very helpful. They're also quite strong, which is very important with this, because there's going to be a lot of knitting on here once I get going. And I like the surface of the needle. It's not super slick. It's got a bit of it's like a satin finish to it, which is a nice needle to knit with. So I recommend those, and Addie do them in packs of 5, which you need. You need to have this sweater on 4 needles and then have a 5th needle to knit with. So you need a pack of 5. 4 wouldn't be enough. So what I want to talk about next is the welt here. I've just cast on for, as I said, the extra long size, and your welts, if you're doing a split welt, and a welt means the strip along the bottom, it's not necessarily going to be all the way around the garment. So this is going to be a split one, and you do a piece like this on 2 needles, and then you do another piece like this on 2 needles, and then they're joined together. So I'll be showing more about that later. Just a few comments now about the knitting belt. A lot of people are familiar with these. They're made in Fetler, Shetland. Well, the one I bought is made there, and there are others. So this is not the only place you can get one. Lisa's Leather Works, and she's on Instagram, and you can order off her website, or you can get them from Jameson in Shetland. So this is the one I bought. It's a full grain leather and stuffed with horsehair, so you can see how thick that is, and it has this series of holes punched into it, and as it is used it does start to bend more. At the moment that's a bit stiff. The instructions that Lisa sends with them say to treat this with some kind of beeswax or something, leather polish. So I did use, this did not come from her, but I bought this separately, just a wax polish, 100% natural boot wax, sorry, beeswax, lanolin, vegetable oils. So that's what I put into here every so often. I'll just try now to do a little bit of a demonstration with the knitting belt. I've just moved the camera round so that you can see the knitting belt. I put it on here and I've got a dark apron on so that it shows up on the camera hopefully. So you take your double pointed needle and it wants to be shoved in here, and you get to know where you want it. Everybody's going to be different, but the idea is that this goes around here under the right arm, and this has the knitting on it. I've just been putting a channel cast on here, so I'm going to start my knitting. And the idea here is that this one is supported and it's kind of stationary, and this one just comes over it. Now I'm not going to be able to do any speed knitting like the Shetland knitters can do, but it does actually, this first row here is going to be quite slow because I'm just doing my first row on top of the channel cast on, so the stitches are all going at a slightly different angle than what they normally would be until I get this done. But hopefully you can see that my left hand is putting this over and over and under and over and under and over and under. It just provides a stationary needle on the right that gives stability so that you can just get a rhythm going much quicker. Now that last one's a bit tricky, so there we go. That's my first row. So then that gets pulled out, and herein goes my second row. Normally my rows would be much bigger than this, and I'm only just doing this to show for demonstration. I do hope you can see that okay. So maybe I need to, yeah, I'll just turn around slightly so you can see this. So this needle I'm holding like this, and it's going over. This one is staying stationary. So if you have a long row of stitches to do, it's quite easy to get a good rhythm going. And I actually can, once I get a piece of knitting on here, I can get going much quicker than this, which is really useful. So as my project progresses, I hope to be able to film a little bit more on each stage. I hope that just helps to show how that works. So here is my channel cast on, and you can see the little bobbly bits at the bottom. I did this with the English method, and that is all explained in Ruth's book, and it's very helpful. You can just follow. She's got pictures of every stage, and that gives a slightly more durable edge than an ordinary cast on. The ordinary cast on that you do for an ordinary sweater is everybody will know this, that you know the edge wears quite a lot. So this was a working garment, and this helped to protect the edge.